All right, let's complete the color theory practice value and saturation worksheet. For this activity, you're going to use one hue for the entire worksheet. And for this, I'm using green. So make sure your name is on it. You write down the name of the hue. And then I've already pre-painted this rectangle in here with just pure green. The rest of this, we're going to be mixing into the green to get the different values and saturations. So first off, we're going to do value. So to change the value, you're either going to lighten the hue to get tints, which are lighter values of a color, and you get tints by adding in the color into white. So you start with more white, and there's a little diagram that's over here on the right. So you start with a white pile, and this is going to be your lightest value of tints, and then you add a little bit of the color in to gradually make that a little bit darker as you go. With the shades, we always start with the lightest color. So when you're adding black to a color, black is going to be the darker value. So for mixing in shades to get darker values, we start with the color and we add just a little bit of black in at a time until we have a really dark value over here on the left. Okay, so both these sides, this is going to be the lightest tint, and then a little bit, or sorry, oh, I had that backwards. Read the percentages here. I've written it out for you. So this is mostly white on the left, 90% white, 10% hue, and then it gets a little bit darker. Over here, 90% hue, and then 10% black, and then it'll be the darkest over here. Helps to read the directions. When we come down here at saturation, to change the saturation, you're going to dull down a color. So there's two ways you can do that. The first way to dull a color is by adding gray. So for this, you want to make like a medium gray, which is about equal parts black and white, but I would tend to lean a little bit more on the white side. So maybe like 2/3 white, 1/3 black to get a medium gray. And then over here, you'll see this is 90% the hue, 10% gray, and then you add a little bit more gray, a little bit more gray, a little bit more gray, and that's documented over here. And then the last way, or the second way that you can desaturate or dull down a color is by mixing its complement color. So the complement color is directly across from the hue or the color on the color wheel. So if you draw a straight line across the middle, that's going to give you its complement. So green's complement is red. So on your palette, this is how you should set it up. You want to fill about a half of a circle or well with your hue. All of these spaces on the worksheet are very small, so we don't need a lot of paint. Remember, you can always get more paint, but if you take too much, that gets wasted. So about a half of a space of green, we need a little bit of its complement. We need about a half of a space of white and a little bit less than half of black. So set up your palette so you're ready to mix. We're using a flat brush to paint in the shapes, and we're using a palette knife to mix our colors. Okay, so let's get started. I'm not gonna do the whole worksheet. Make sure you read underneath it. It tells you about the percentages of how much of each needs to be in each space. And like I said, over here, there's some visuals to help you get those mixed, the tints, shades, and tones with gray mixed in. The only thing that's different that doesn't have a visual is down at the bottom. Here you'll have 100% of your color, so that will be pure color, 100% of the complement, and then look at the percentages in between. So the middle should be about 50-50, and when you mix two complement colors, typically it makes brown. And then this space is about 75% hue, 25% complement, and 25% hue, 75% complement. So mostly hue, a little bit of the complement, mostly complement, a little bit of the hue. All right, let's do the tints and together, and then you'll need to finish up the rest of the worksheet on your own. So to get started, we're not going to mix directly into this white because then I would have to get more paint. So I'm going to scoop up a good amount of white and put it in this well on this side. Clean the palette knife. Just grab like a pinprick amount of the color or the hue, really, really small amount, and mix that in with the palette knife. Make sure it's mixed in really well before you dip your brush into the paint. You can wipe on the side of the palette to get it off of your palette knife. We only need to fill about less than halfway on the bristles with our paint and cut in. This is practice for technique, technical skill. Make sure you pull the paint as far as you can to fill the shape. And you can turn your hand or you can turn your paper, whichever is easier, but fill in that space, okay? Remember, colors are a little bit darker when they're wet, but they will dry a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna mix in the same space for this whole side. So this is good. So I'm just gonna grab just a tiny bit more of the green and keep mixing in a little bit at a time. I need to make sure my brush is washed in between values. Mix that completely. It's a nice minty color. And get my clean and dried brush. We don't want to dilute the paint. And fill in the next space. Go slow, cut in on your edges. Clean your brush out. Dry it. Make sure your palette knife is clean so you're not dipping white into the green. Just grab a little bit more. Mix it right in the same space. Clean your palette knife. Put a clean brush into the paint. Pull the paint as far as you can to fill in the shape. If it doesn't darken it, and that's an okay transition, but I'm gonna pick up a little bit more green for the last one. Make sure my brush is clean and dry. My palette knife is clean and dry. Scoop up a little bit more green, mix that in. For the last space. And grab just a little bit of paint. Cut in. So none of these spaces should be 100% your hue. Read the percentages that are there. And that's it. There's the tints. Okay, so the rest of the worksheet you're going to do on your own. So again, use the side diagrams that show the directions. Make sure you read the percentages of each and fill in each of these spaces nice and neat. And that's it.